Welcome to the Gut 360 podcast. I'm your host, Eli Brecher, a registered associate nutritionist on a mission to empower you to transform the health of your mind, body, and gut. This podcast is the place where we share nutrition tips, mindset tools, and actionable steps to help you thrive on your journey to a healthier gut and a happier you. If you're ready to get into the driver's seat of your own health and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place, and I am so glad you're here. Hello and welcome back to the Gut 360 podcast for your weekly dose of Monday morning inspiration. Today, we are talking about mindset, redefining what success means to you, and how to feel good in your business and your life with Becki Rabin. But before we get started, let's kick off with our opening tradition, which is the food of the week. So my food of the week this week is chestnuts. Without doubt, my favorite way to enjoy chestnuts is just as they are, roasted. We used to go round to my grandparents and my grandma would roast them over her fireplace, but I also love the ones that you get on the street or in a Christmas market. Who knew chestnuts also have loads of health benefits? They're packed with fiber for a healthy gut, high in minerals like copper and magnesium, and high in vitamin C and B vitamins too. They're also full of specific antioxidants associated with heart health and have been shown to support with blood sugar levels and weight management too. So get yourself some chestnuts next time you see them. Now let's get into today's episode on how to feel good in your business and your life with Becki Rabin, who's an author, business mentor, motivational speaker, podcast host, and a trailblazer in the self-development arena. She's worked with thousands of individuals, brands, and companies through her mentoring, speaking, and consultancy to help them break free from self-doubt, rise up from fear, and access their fullest potential. Becki is dedicated to helping women create a mindset that will help them find the confidence to take action in their career, business, and life goals. Welcome, Becki, to the Gut 360 podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you for being here. I like to start off every episode by asking each guest just to share a little bit about your journey and how you ended up where you are today.
I think it was really fluid and kind of just happened in its own way. My background is advertising, marketing. I worked in the advertising industry. That's what my degree was. I worked in the magazines, the major magazines doing the advertising. And I was really ill, actually, really interestingly, being on this podcast. I had really bad gut health. I was suffering with anxiety, very much, I would say probably depression. And then it was showing up in my body in many ways, which I didn't realize it was coming from depression, like poor skin, bad gut health, bloating, IBS, my intolerances were really bad. And so I started to learn how to kind of heal from a more alternative standpoint. I've always been into like natural health and healing. And as I was kind of learning, I realized there were so many other girls that worked for me that were struggling. And I just started to blog literally like what I was eating. And these were the days when no one was talking about being gluten-free or like using adaptogens and mushrooms or any of that stuff. And I was talking about, reishi's really good for this. Like in hindsight now, it's actually crazy because everyone thought I was being really woo-woo. And now it's so mainstream. And so I just started sharing. And I think where I had that background of magazines, it ended up turning into like, I guess what I called like a wellness magazine, an online kind of wellness magazine, which I know we've known each other since those days. Alternatively Healthy, it was like my baby. It's kind of how I came into the industry. And ultimately what I wanted to create was a wellness platform that was written and brought to you by expert, but had a bit more of an alternative stance to it. So I started doing that, hosting events, going to events, and then kind of fell back in love with fitness, became a personal trainer, and then took the leap one day to go full-time into the personal training and running Alternatively Healthy. I also at the time I was crazy. I actually had a marketing agency with a friend called Two Influence, which I know used to come to a lot of the events and stuff.
I remember it well.
Yeah, Two Influence. And we used to do a lot of events and PR for wellness brand, essentially, whilst also doing our stuff on the side too. So I did that and I kind of was simultaneously running them all. And then I think naturally what kind of happened was I carried on doing the wellness magazine and the wellness stuff and I loved it. But I kind of just got pushed into a lot more doing the personal development stuff because all of the women that I was working with, particularly in the fitness space, they actually all looked great. They just hated themselves. And I just found myself really naturally gravitating towards wanting to help them see how wonderful they are. At that point, I'd been on a real healing journey with my own self-worth and my own self-confidence. And I think what naturally happened I left a career to start a business. And I think what happened was people then started asking me for their help. How can I lead my career and start a business? Can you help me with my business? Where I was working in the like fitness industry at some of the best gyms, a lot of PTs then started coming to me saying, can you help me build my business? And I think naturally it just turned very quickly into me doing business mentoring and consulting, which kind of used all my skills, but simultaneously on the side, I've just always continued that feel good mindset, life coaching, personal development side. I think the business coaching is like my skill and I'm good at it and I love it. But I really light up when a woman actually believes they're capable, when they have the tools to, like, strategy I can geek out on, but the mindset stuff just really started to interest me. And so I just continued to explore, I guess, growing in that area as a coach. I got my RTT therapy qualification, my hypnotherapy qualification, doing my breathwork coaching now, obviously trained as a life coach. So I think what I've tried to do is get as many tools in my box, and ultimately they all have the same compass. It's all about changing your belief system, changing your energy, rewiring the way that you show up so that you can live the best life possible, so that you can manifest, so that you can start a good business, so that you can run a good business. And so when I did that, that's kind of when it all then transpired into the podcast. And then I got the book deal and the book came out. So I guess there's been like two parallel things that have been going on with the business side, business coaching side, and the mindset coaching side, but they do feed into each other. And I guess it's just all happened really naturally. And that's how I got here. I didn't really overthink it too much. I kind of just went where the next step felt like it was the right place to go.
That's the way to do it, isn't it? To go with the flow, and life takes you to where you're meant to be. I'm a big believer in that. And thanks for sharing. I mean, I remember I actually met some of my closest friends in the wellness industry through the events that you organized and invited me to back in the day. And I also remember being part of some of your business coaching programs. I remember doing a one-to-one strategy day with you at Soho House, at White City House. And I thought it was so cool. I felt really high vibe. And also I read your book as soon as it came out. And I loved the way that you make manifesting so attainable and so easy to understand for the average person. So I want to ask you, if someone is a bit skeptical, maybe doesn't even understand what manifesting even means, what is it? Can you chat to us about, our subconscious thoughts and how the way that we think about things can actually correlate with what happens in our reality?
Yeah, I mean, I could go on forever about this, but I think manifesting is the buzzword at the moment, right? There's so much talk out there now about manifesting, which is wonderful because more and more people are understanding that they can change their life by the way that they show up, the way that they think, what they do, the action they take, 100%. There are some amazing voices, leaders, authors bringing the conversation to the forefront. And what I think it also has done is created a little bit of overwhelm. And for me, manifesting isn't essentially like a step-by-step formula. And this is why I wrote the book this way, there are principles that you can live your life by that will support you to manifest. Manifesting ultimately, as a lot of us understanding it, is getting something. Let's put it simply, like, I want a relationship, it's in my life. I want to have more money, it's in my life. But actually, you manifest everything. You manifest good, you manifest bad. And there are people that are like, oh, have I manifested this bad thing happening to me? And it's like, you can't always control what's happening to someone else. There's obviously moving parts, but literally we're always manifesting. The life that you live, the life that I live, the life that whoever's listening to this is living, they have created it by some form and some capacity, whether that's taking action, whether that's by thinking, whether it's the energy that they, you coming into this world, you doing this job, you've taken the steps there to get there. So there's kind of two parts for me. There's the woo-woo side where you talk about the energy that you have and the vibe that you're putting out there to the world, which is actually not that woo-woo. Then there's the psychology part, and it's like your thinking. And the two actually match up really nicely together because you've got your thoughts, the thoughts that you have every single day. And to be honest, 95% of those thoughts come from your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind is your unconscious mind, your subconscious mind, same thing, is your conditioning. It's what you learn about life and what you're capable of having. Please stop me if it doesn't make sense. I want to make it as simple as possible. But your subconscious mind is like built out of what you pretty much learned growing up. Really susceptible in your like ages of 0 to 7, but anything you experience growing up, what you learned from your parents, usually your caregivers, your teachers, all of those things about what you're worthy of having about certain things shape your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind is 95% of your thoughts. 5% is your conscious, which is like your immediate thinking, you're setting goals, like that sort of stuff. And essentially, every time you have a thought, you naturally feel a certain way when you have that thought. And your feelings are the most powerful, or I always say are the most powerful part of manifesting. Because when you feel a certain way, you attract things that match that level. But it also will change the way that you act. So from a psychology perspective, the way that you think makes you feel a certain way, which will make you act or not act, and your actions will change. So if you want to start a business and you don't think you're pretty enough, I mean, all of us women at some point have thought that about ourselves, but you don't think you're pretty enough to get on stage or to speak on camera, you're going to feel pretty crap about that. And it's going to likely stop you from showing up. You're likely not to start the podcast or to put yourself on video. So simply, your reality is not going to change. You're not going to have that business. From an energetic perspective and looking at like the law of attraction, it is essentially your emotions and the energy that you put out there that make you either operate at a high or a low frequency. So those feelings of fear, shame, guilt, anger, they're low vibe, low frequency emotions. That law of attraction will say makes you attract more of those low vibe experiences. If you're feeling peace, joy, enlightenment, purpose, you're expansive, and the law of attraction will say you're more attractive to those good things. Now, the part where the psychology gets good and the mind gets amazing is you are wired to love the familiar and reject anything unfamiliar in your mind. Your mind literally learns from two things, what it sees and what it hears. And so the more it sees positive things or hears you say positive things, the more it is going to, and you can really geek out on the science behind this, but it is going to accept and look for evidence that supports those beliefs. And so when I always say to someone, like, if you're in a rut and you're feeling really down, you get used to comfortable feeling that way. And so your mind will constantly hear the thought, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. And it will seek experiences and look for things or notice the things that support that thought. And that is science. That is psychology. That is literally the way that your mind like responds, learns, grows, changes. And also your mind can't tell if something's true or something's not. So that's why tools like visualization, for example, are really powerful, because if you say, even in jest, oh, I'm an ugly cow, your mind hears that. It doesn't know that you're joking or you're being serious. It can't differentiate the two. It just hears what it hears and it just sees what it sees. And so that's how the two kind of marry up, essentially, is that your thoughts carry feelings and your feelings carry an energy, which makes you either attractive or unattractive to certain things in life, but also makes you act in a certain way. Have I explained that in a simple way?
100%. I think it makes total sense. It took me a while to get my head around it, but one day it just clicked and I understood. It made sense. It's like the example I always hear is when you're thinking about getting a certain car, you start to see that car everywhere on the road. And it's not that everyone has suddenly bought that car this week. It's just your brain wasn't noticing it before. Yeah. So
that's your reticular activating system, it's called, essentially. It's part of your brain that is like seeking out that thing.
There you go. We love some science behind this.
For me, it's a way of living. If you want to manifest good, it's learning to live a certain way.
Definitely. So can I ask you then, what if someone grew up in a household where they weren't surrounded by uplifting, positive energy? Maybe they had a parent or two parents or siblings who were perhaps bringing them down or encouraging them to naturally see the bad in things or think negatively. Is that person lost for hope, or is there hope? How can they get out of what they were used to growing up with? How can they reframe the way that they think about things?
Such a lovely, good question, because ultimately, if you're growing up in that household, and to be honest, I did slightly grow up in a household where my mum, life's completely changed now. She was quite negative about a lot of things, and everyone had more money than us, didn't like people with money. Everything was tough, everything was hard. And don't get me wrong, I'm a mum now, and she was a single mum of two with my dad died. Like, she was grieving, like so much going on there. And I'm in awe of, now I understand and rationalize and understand why she was the way she was. At the time, you're learning. So if you're growing up in a household where your parents are looking at things from a negative perspective, they're not, let's go off and do this, you're capable of anything, you're learning that your subconscious mind is being primed to believe that, to think that's what you're worthy of, and it will show up in your life. Everything, like, that will be your belief system. Maybe on like your conscious level, it's not, because you've read some books that have told you otherwise, but deep down in your subconscious, you are wired to think that way. Now, you'll either go two ways. You either learn to live like that and you're conditioned like that and it shows up for you in your life, or you decide, no, this isn't my story, I'm going to change it. And the beauty is that there is so much out there, neuroplasticity now, like on how you can actually change the wiring of your mind. And there are so many unbelievable tools. And I guess this is where I've become obsessed on training myself in all of those tools to help you change your subconscious mind and the way that you think. So obviously you need to do the work on assessing and being aware. Awareness is the first point. What are my thoughts around success, around wealth, around love? Becoming a mum, I've hit a whole new set of subconscious beliefs that couldn't have even been on show until I became a mum. And I've noticed myself falling into patterns that my mum was in. And I was like, I have to redefine that again. So for me, whenever I'm trying to reframe, I get really clear on what my thoughts are. You can ask yourself the question, like, what do I truly believe of this? Or what am I afraid I'll lose if this happens? Or what am I afraid of? Sometimes you can't always get that subconscious thought, and you might need someone to pull it up and you'd be like, oh my God, I never thought of that. Or you might need to do something like a hypnosis that will bring it up. That's what is so powerful about RTT therapy, is we regress you into your subconscious mind through hypnosis. And there we actually regress you to scenes in your childhood that give you the answer as to what what you saw and what beliefs you have formed. And then the flip side of the RTT is you get the transformation audio. So that's where the hypnosis part comes in, is you're in that hypnotic state. We're down in your subconscious. We then tell it all the words that we want you to like manifest or have or feel. So and that's where affirmations are really powerful. And do not get me wrong, I think an affirmation can change your energy. So affirmations are positive sentences like, I am worthy of feeling good. It feels good to feel good. Money comes to me easily. Opportunities come to me easily. I think they're really powerful to switch up your energy. And if you have a negative thought, to instantly think the thought, what would be the positive, and say it out loud. If we really want to prime our subconscious, we need to repeat those affirmations as much as possible. And if we can do it in like a hypnotic state, even better. Or if you can do it before you go to bed at night, or just listening to those affirmations at night as you're about to go into your subconscious mind and you're about to marinate in those thoughts all night. Brilliant. So tools like that are great. Breath work is really brilliant to re-regulate your nervous system, meditation, visualization. There's so many tools that you can do guided or at home. So yeah, there are so many ways, but the good news is you can absolutely change your belief system. And I think the more you think that positive thought and the more your mind gets used to it, gets comfortable for it, and it starts to look for it, and your energy changes. So it can happen really quickly.
That's amazing. And I'm sure really reassuring to a lot of people listening to know that you're not stuck with the belief system that you were raised with, and you do have power and control over your thoughts, and there are tools in place that you can take advantage of. And I know that you talk about how becoming a mum has made you face this whole new set of beliefs. And I mean, I remember a few years ago, you were very much in your boss girl era, let's call it. And now you're embracing the changing seasons of life. So how has that transition been for you, becoming a mum? How has your mindset changed, and how have you managed all of that?
Oh my God, it has been, you know what? I find it really hard to talk about becoming a mum without getting upset, because it has been the most humbling, life-changing, amazing carnage, hard work. Any mums listening out there will get it. It is the most life-changing thing. But from perspective of someone who works in the personal development world, who had, I was in my boss girl era, but before having kids, I was also physically, emotionally, spiritually in the best shape of my life. My book had just come out. I felt like I was super confident. I was thriving. I feel wholeheartedly loved myself. I looked after myself. I built an abundant business. I knew I was practicing self-care. I was exercising. I was thriving, fully thriving. And I've had 2 kids in 2 years. So I doubled the hardness for myself. It's not for the faint-hearted. having kids is not for the faint-hearted, but having two so quickly. But I think the humbling part is I've had to relearn everything about self-care, about self-love, about how do I actually, it's very easy to write a book. It's not very easy. It was one of the hardest things I ever did, but it's very different, let's say, to tell people to love themselves, to nourish themselves, to do the work on themselves, to sit up late at night journaling, and to have a morning routine when you've got no sleep and kids that are bouncing on you at 6 a.m. and no, you don't want to get up at 5 a.m. an hour before because I haven't slept all night. And so I almost want to apologize to all the women that I wrote that book and that read it and were mums, because it's not realistic. And there's a real fine line between, am I making an excuse? I'm so exhausted. The kids have gone to sleep for an hour. There's all these jobs to be done around the house. I'm also just like desperate for a nap. I also just want 5 minutes. I just want to sabotage and sit on my phone. Oh, but no, I also should be doing work on myself, or I should meditate right now, or I should exercise right now. And often, naturally, where our mind is wired to love the familiar and resist anything that's unfamiliar, what then happens over time is you just reject, and we often do, reject and resist the things that we know are going to make us feel good, because deep down, we don't have this comfortability feeling good. And I think a lot of that stuff gets ripped away from you when you become a mum. So I would say all my self-care and self-love and self-nourishment and self-development foundations got ripped underneath my feet when I became a mum. So I've had to relearn, which is difficult when you're in an industry and you're teaching other women to love themselves. And for a long time, you've talked about how my sacred hour in the morning, get up, no phone, slow morning, exercise, journal, meditate, have a coffee.
I'm so guilty of this. I'm totally guilty of it.
and you know what? Enjoy it and have it and marinate in it and nourish it. And I think that is typically why when you become a mum, you tend to resonate more with other coaches that are mums. And I don't tend to buy from, it's not I won't listen to, and it's not because I judge or anything, but I now won't necessarily always buy a course from someone who isn't a mum. And maybe that's because I'm in the industry, but because I know it's not going to be built based on the time that I have in my life right now. And listen, this is not forever. I'm in the trenches right now. My kids are both still very young and no one's sleeping. So, when your kids are 5 and 6, the load doesn't change and the overstimulation doesn't change. But I do think when you're in that beginning part and the sleep isn't there and you've not slept for a long time, it's very different. And sleep is probably the biggest part that makes it really difficult, or lack of. I feel like now everything about how I show up with my work and my business has changed, and everything that I want in life has changed. I want to help other people, but it's with a really different energy behind it now that I'm a mum.
Totally. That's actually what I wanted to ask you about next. I want to ask you about success. What does success mean to you? How has that evolved over time since the start of your motherhood journey, in terms of defining how you want your business to look, what works for you and your family? How is success different now?
You know what? It's changed so much. And I think it will change individually to any mum. Like mum to mum, you ask them, that's probably going to be different for all. But I think what I've seen with a lot of mums who do the work that I do, who are maybe in my generation of coaches, all of them seem to be going through this like death and rebirth. Who am I? What do I want to do? Everything I spoke about before feels like absolute crap now. It doesn't make sense. Or you do go through this complete change. But for me, in my boss guilt era, if I'm really honest, I think there was this huge strive and drive to help people without a doubt. But there was also this outwardly seeking approval, and success was, is my book a Sunday best time seller? Am I earning 10 grand a month on work? Am I selling out more? It's a rat race sometimes. And I think becoming a mum, success for me now is like, how can I work? Work for me is part of me. I talk to my sister about, you need to have more of you time in your life. Like, is that going to the gym and going to the spa or whatever? And yes, but actually for me, I come alive when I work, when I'm creating, when I'm helping. And that's been a challenge, because ultimately work is work as well. When do you switch off from something that feels like such a passion for you? But I feel alive when I'm working. I feel in love and abundant with my kids, but I don't feel alive. And I think the success for me now is, how can I shape a business where I'm working 2 or 3 days a week and I get to be with my children from 3 p.m. onwards and have 2 full days a week with them still, where it's just me and them? And how can I make sure that I'm earning enough to fulfill the kind of life that I want for my children, but I'm not bothered about being a millionaire right now. And, you know, do I really want to be this big household name right now that's like going here and doing this and doing that and being away from my kids? No. But I also think that one thing I'm learning in motherhood is everything changes and you go in seasons with motherhood. So I feel like ask me in 2 years and I'll be like, I'm ready to be in my boss girl era again. And, you know, that's built inside of me. So I think it's an ongoing conversation I keep having to have with myself. But success for me right now in this moment is making sure I'm getting some sleep, making sure I've got some help around the house and with childcare so that I can work, and making sure that I can work in a way that fills me up. But it's made me really go, if it's not making me feel good, I'm not in. It's either a full body yes for me or it's a no. And I don't care about passing out money, opportunities, or experiences if it doesn't align to my life and what I want to have for my life with my kids.
Well said. I honestly think that you're such an inspiration for saying that. And also, I resonate with what you say about coming alive when you work. And I really like how you put such a positive spin on it when I say it. And it's very much the truth for me. If I have a free weekday evening, I will bury myself in my laptop and get as much done as I can. And that I find that really rewarding, which is a lot of people find that weird. But I like how you said it. It's not something to be ashamed of, but at the same time, striving for balance and realizing what is truly important to you in life is obviously the most important thing. And I love that you're prioritizing your family, passing up opportunities if they don't align with the goals that you are prioritizing at the moment. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I also love your emphasis on feeling good, because ultimately that's what life is all about, right? So if someone's looking to run a feel-good business that can really stand the test of time through the seasons, where would you recommend that they start?
I think it's about asking yourself questions, linking back to the question prior. Anything you do in life, it's all about your energy behind it. If you're working of an evening till 1 o'clock in the morning, but you feel nourished, unsleep deprived because the rest of the week you've slept, or you don't have to get up at 6 a.m. Everything for me is what energy are you putting behind what you're doing? Some people would be working late at night because they have to, because they feel like they need to, because if they don't, they're not going to get this job. It's such a different energy. And so I think the same rule applies for business now. If you want to set up a feel-good businesses, asking yourself what feels good for me, like not what feels good for Becki or any, like what feels good for me. What do I enjoy? Like, I love to create. I love creating courses. I love coming up with, what am I going to do? How am I going to help these people? And that's when I come alive. I love writing. It feels so good for me. When I wrote my book, so many people talk about how hard they found it, how soul destroying they found it. I literally loved writing my book. I thrived. I was in my element because I was just lost in this, allowing myself to be the vessel to just say what I needed to say. I look back at that book sometimes and I'm like, I didn't write that. Like me, Becki, now wouldn't have the capacity to write that. But I think starting a feel-good business, it's really hard when you're starting. And ultimately, I do think, and I have learned, everyone I've ever worked with and my own journey, the case in point is it was feel-good because it was a passion and a hobby. It wasn't a need. I had a full-time job still. And I didn't leave that full-time job, not until, like, it never really works that this one's earning as much. You always have to take a bit of a jump and a leap of faith. But it felt good at the beginning because it was like genuinely a passion. It was a hobby. I was earning my wage. And so if I'm working with a client and they're working full time, but they're just qualified as something, they want to set up their business. For me, I always say to them, stay in that full-time job as much as you can, because if you're getting paid well, the energy in running your business becomes about, what do I want to do? How do I want to be of service? Who needs my work? What work do? And that's such a fulfilling, purposeful, and more abundant energy to have. And I know that because there have been times in motherhood where actually it's been a bit more like, what should I do to make some more money? Because I, naturally, sleep deprivation, having sick kids, we've really been through it with our kids. There's been months where I've not been able to work and I've had to go, okay, what can I do now where I can make sure I can earn some money? And the energy behind that work is so different to, okay, well, I'm earning money. I've got this recurring income coming in all the time. What can I do that just actually feels of service and feels like joy? And so I would just say, like, try and find the joy as much as you can and the passion, and keep that alive in your business, because it can be really easy to follow what you should be doing, what this guru is telling you you're doing, what everyone else is telling you you're doing, how to make this much, how to do that. Like, have I got a book deal? Is it something? And so many people forget to actually like have fun with it, or the reason why they started it, which is usually born out of a passion to help or do better.
That is such brilliant advice. Honestly, it has to feel good. The amount of brand partnerships that I've passed up because they haven't felt aligned, they haven't been in line with my values. Yeah, they would have been great money, but if it doesn't feel authentic to me, I'm not going to work with a brand that I don't believe in or promote a product that I don't believe in. And I think people feel that energy. People can tell if what you're doing really is lighting you up, and that's attractive to them. That makes people want to work with you. And then ultimately your business is going to thrive so much more in the long term, right?
Yeah, your energy does not lie ever. And I think that when we go back to like talking about the manifesting side of things, ultimately you either smell good or you don't, like in your energy, and people can sniff when someone's inauthentic or when it's coming from the wrong place. And this is why I always say, like, we make manifesting and calling in the things that we want, we put it all so high on this pedestal because ultimately the things that we want, the car that you want, the love that you want, you really want to actually have a feeling from all of those things. Like you want a relationship because you want to feel loved. You want a car because you want to feel wealthy or safe or whatever it might be. But ultimately, like, to make it simple, we all just want to feel better. We all want to feel good. And that's why for me, that everything I talk about and a lot of the premise underneath the book, and if I was ever to write another one again, for me, it's about like, how can I feel good? And that becomes a lot easier to focus on. Sort of, how can I feel my higher self and elevated all the time? Oh, what can I do today that makes me feel good? Who can I go and see that makes me feel good? What can I listen to that's feel good? What am I doing that isn't making me feel good? It's a lot simpler to get on that spiral up. Once you start getting comfortable feeling good, that's when you can have fun and start playing with, how can I elevate? How can I become my higher self? How can I feel more abundant? How can I feel more like high frequency feelings? They can only come when you start feeling comfortable, feeling good. And that's why for me, a big part of my premise of life is like, how can I feel good? And confirming to myself, it feels good to feel good. I feel good feeling good,
You're absolutely right. I remember coming to one of your events, and one of the activities was write down all the things you want in one column, and then next to it, write down why you want it in terms of what is the feeling that it will bring you. And then in the next column, what else can give you that feeling now without having the thing that you think it is that you want? You're not actually chasing the thing, you're chasing the feeling that it's going to give you. So how can you bring yourself that feeling now?
Well, where does it already exist in your life? And I posted a post about it the other day, and I said, my 30th birthday, I was in a room full of amazing, I had the best night of my actual life. I felt so loved. And when I blew out my candle, instead of making a wish, this was when I was really ready to call in a partner, and there was a point of sadness that there wasn't like my man there, but it was gone because I was just so focused on how lucky I felt to have so many amazing friends that adore me, and like people had written messages and sent videos in from here and there and everywhere. And I remember blowing out that candle and being like, it's already here. Like, thank you for the love that's already in my life. And literally 5 years on, look where I am. And I say that all the time. I was the one part when I wrote my book, the one part I was desperately manifesting was the love, the family unit, and the relationship and the babies. And I got really clear on like, where does that already exist in my life? Well, I have so much love around me. I have so many wonderful friends. I have such a good network. And I just trusted that it was coming, and I focused on where it already existed, and it was instant. And I remember I had a coach at the time, Jane, she's a Kundalini coach, high time yoga. She's absolutely amazing. And she said to me, you wouldn't want it so much if it wasn't meant for you. So if I was to tell you now you were about to meet the love of your life, what would you do with your life? And I was like, I'd probably enjoy how lucky I am to have the freedom and independence that I do have right now, to be able to do yoga for 2 hours on a Saturday morning. I mean, impossible in my life right now, like absolutely impossible right now. And at the time, my friend texted me, and she has 3 kids, and was like, God, what I would do to be like going for a walk and having a yoga mentoring session right now. Like, I've got 3 kids jumping all over me. And in that moment, I just surrendered and went, that's going to happen for me. And one day I won't get to do this. I'm just going to enjoy my single life and trust. Within 2 weeks, I met Matt, and 2 years later, 2 kids later. So I just think when we want something so much, we really attach ourselves to the thing, but actually it's the feeling that we want. So if we can let go of the thing and focus on, how do we want to feel? How do I want to feel? Where does that already exist in my life? Or how can I bring more safe? Like at the moment, I want more freedom and more independence. And okay, well, where can I get that? Because ultimately my whole life right now feels like I don't have any independence or freedom because the kids are always around. And so where can I look at where I do have that in my life already? Well, in my work, there's tons of freedom and independence in my work, so there's always somewhere where you can look for that feeling and spend more time focusing on it.
100%. I love the way that you've phrased that. My last question for you is, on the Gut 360 podcast, we always take a 360-degree approach to gut health. Obviously, nutrition is one piece of the puzzle, but it's about so much more than just the food that we eat. So can you talk to us about any wellness or lifestyle habits that you've personally been incorporating to help you thrive in your life and business? Obviously, I know your wellness practices don't look the way that they did 3 years ago, but how's it looking now?
I think you're absolutely right in the fact that it's a 360 approach. Like when I had all my issues with my IBS and my leaky gut, and like it was presenting in so many ways in my body, people always said to me, like, how did you, I had severe allergies, acne, like all of it. How did you heal it? And I was like, it was a 360 approach. I prioritized more sleep in my life. Funny now, but I did at the time. I supplemented my nutrition. I moved out of this restrictive diet and started eating more and more variety. But I also really prioritized my healing. And I think that's something that doesn't get spoken a lot about, the gut, brain, healing, trauma. I think my gut went into overdrive because of depression, but from a really bad breakup. And there was so much inflammation in my body that actually, for me, learning to meditate, learning to heal those trapped emotions within me, to move through that heartbreak, as I started to become happy in myself, outside of what I was eating or even how I was exercising, even though all those things were in play, I was taking probiotics and all of that sort of stuff. For me, I really feel like all that inflammation in my body, the acne, the skin, all cleared up, and the bloating went when I got happy and I created a hugely less stressful environment. I changed the way that I worked. I prioritized sleep. I slowed down. I ate slower. I really tried to incorporate slow pace of living. I really don't think it gets spoken enough about when you heal from like your emotions and the way that you feel about yourself. You heal on the inside as well, in your actual body. Maybe there's a lot of research there to be done about how your body, and I know there's so many great books that I read around how your body keeps the score. And
that's an amazing book, such an interesting book. There's research out there already, and there's definitely more research to be done. I recorded an episode the other day with my friend and my breathwork coach, Sarah Hyde. She's amazing. And she talks a lot about the mind-body connection. And she goes really deep in this episode, which I think will be out by now, about how you can do so much work on your mind, which in turn can have such positive knock-on effects on your physical health. I know it's not always black and white.
And that is why I'm so passionate about helping people rewire the way that they think, because it impacts your entire life. Your mind is the most powerful asset you have.
It really is. It's huge. Becki, we have a closing tradition on the podcast where I ask every guest, what does a 360-degree approach to health look like for you? I feel like you've kind of answered that partly, but if you want to build on that, what would you share?
I guess in my motherhood era right now, I would just say, like, take care of you in a way that feels good. I do also think there's such a fine line, and I don't want to open a whole other can of conversation, but there's such a fine line of I must be exercising, eating, thinking well. Like, where does that line not become the same toxic patterns that we used to see back in the day? I must be doing HIIT, I must be doing this. And I think there's a lot of coaches out there that are, beating people up with a discipline stick. And I think that actually the whole 360 approach for me is about what feels good for me. How can I move my body in ways that feel good? How can I think more things that feel good? How can I nourish myself with food that feels good? And less about like, how can I be more disciplined and how can I be more controlled? I think it's about asking the question, how can I encompass from all areas of my life? Like, essentially, does this make me feel good? No, binge eating in the cupboard, it doesn't make you feel good. So do I love myself enough to eat in a way that feels nourishing? So I think if you can start with the question, does this feel good, on every element of your life? Am I going to the gym today? There's a real difference between does this feel good or like, am I doing it because I have to?
I think that nourishing your mind, your body, your gut shouldn't be another obsession, shouldn't be another thing to take off the list. So it should light you up. It should make you feel good, like you said. Thank you so much, Becki. You are such an inspiration to me, and you have been for many years. Where can people find you and how can people work with you?
We're going through a bit of a revamp at the moment. As I said, motherhood has definitely definitely changed the game for me. So you can find me over at Becki Rabin on Instagram. I do a lot of my work there. I'm in the process of relaunching podcasts. We're doing some feel good challenges. I think by the time this comes out, we probably would have just already run one. But in the new year, I always run a feel good and manifest one. I think this year I'm going to lean it slightly towards the like feel good manifest side of things. Basically, come and hang out on my Instagram. You can work with me one-to-one from a business capacity. And I also do hypnotherapy sessions, like RTT therapy sessions for people who do really want to reprogram their mind on a specific thing. It really is something you have to do one-to-one because it's very specific to your individual circumstances. So just hit me up on Instagram and we can go from there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Becki. Really appreciate you coming onto the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Gut 360 podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast or learned something new, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. And make sure you hit follow for weekly episodes every Monday morning. Do share this podcast with anyone who you think it may benefit. And for your chance to win a free online nutrition consultation with me, just take a screenshot of this episode and share it on your Instagram stories, tagging at Eli Brecher Nutrition so I can repost you. See you back here next Monday.